The boy had freaked out from the pain, and he'd latched on to the nearest person, who happened to be Darius. It was yet another reminder how unprepared he and his brother were to bring everyone to safety, all while successfully removing any trace that they were the ones who'd brought down Valerie and her merry band of slave owners. "Did you eat?" Rye asked. Darius inclined his head. He wasn't about to take on drug dealers on an empty stomach. Sweet Jesus, this day could piss off. They'd handled the slavers, the owners, and now they were moving on to drug dealers. What was next? Aliens? "How's the kid doing? Gray?" Ryan went on, presumably to pass time. They were expecting a call from their baby sister on the sat phone, and there wasn't a whole lot to do while they waited. "He's in and out of it. Darius trailed off and exited the bathroom with a pensive frown, trying to come up with the right word. "Quiet, I guess. Restless and numb, refusing to believe he's free." But mostly he was quiet. The knucklehead had needed something to do earlier, so Darius had told him and whoever was up to it to load the tender with supplies they probably wouldn't need at the end, because rescue was hopefully not far off. Food, medical supplies, a raft, whatever could be useful. The plan was to hide out on one of the little islands for a day or two before rescue arrived. But as Darius had told Gray more than once, no plan survived the first contact with the enemy. It was better to cover their asses and bring everything they could carry. Ryan had started to say something else, only to get interrupted by the phone in his hand. So he excused himself to go up to the upper deck where the reception was at least decent. Darius ran a hand through his hair and blew out a breath. He couldn't fucking wait to be off this goddamn yacht, even if it meant babysitting a group of traumatized boys on a deserted island. They had lowered anchor outside the biggest of the 5 islands, and despite the fact that the region was popular for tourists, not to mention heavily trafficked by fishermen, they hadn't spotted a single sign of life. In other words, it was the perfect location to deal in drugs and who knew what else. Weapons, probably. Darius had studied the area enough before boarding the yacht, and he'd memorized the privately owned islands. Jolter Cays didn't belong in that category, so even if they couldn't secure a rescue plan, it was unlikely they'd have to wait very long. The only problem was if they were spotted by the wrong people. Jonas, Nikolai, was that guy's name, and Owen, the kid who'd been hiding out by the pool when Ryan got here earlier. Darius scratched the side of his head and tried to remember all the names. He'd made it to the bridge after doing another check of all the staterooms, just in case they'd forgotten something. And now he was standing back, watching Jonas and Nikolai stare tirelessly at the communication devices. Ryan must have given them the job. Maybe they'd been restless too. Owen, who was upset on and off, was sitting on the floor with a stack of maps. That was 3 out of the 13 boys. 13 fucking boys. Darius groaned internally and scrubbed at his face. How the hell had this happened? A quick in-and-out gig to get a 21-year-old guy named Gray Nolan. Yeah, fucking right. Static came from one of the comm radios, and Nikolai quickly grabbed it and responded. Ryan's voice filtered through, and he requested Darius to head down to the bottom deck. "Be right there," Darius answered. But before he left the bridge, he had a difficult task for Jonas and Nikolai. He stepped closer and found a notepad lying to the side, and he located a pen shortly after. "I need a list of names." He kept his voice down so Owen wouldn't hear. "There are 8 of you from the staff, and I gotta know who the weak links are." Jonas got defensive. "We can all be trusted." "That's not what he meant," Nikolai responded stoically. The 2 guys were as similar as they were different. Both had, at one point, been ripped away from the lives they'd known, and they'd been hardened by their experiences. The difference was the hint of innocence in Jonas's eyes. It was completely absent in Nikolai's pale green ones. His features could cut glass, and his posture spoke of how guarded he was, alert and ready. He'd been forced to kill. Darius knew that much. Nikolai had been one of the winners in the cage fights. Nikolai and Owen wouldn't go in the same column on that sheet of paper. Jonas was able-bodied and sufficiently strong mentally. Darius needed to know if there was anyone else from the staff he could count.